He gave the shivering alien girl his jacket, not knowing it was a proposal. The air inside the Valkyrie station's executive exchange chamber was the perfect, tension-filled 0-degree standard, a neutral temperature that felt like a quiet chill against Logan's skin. He stood near the perimeter, a high-level security consultant for the Terran Omniterra conglomerate, watching the sealed data exchange. His real role was deep cover observer, a silent auditor of Kaelon corporate maneuvers. His asset, technically, was his own suit, a quantum-layered thermal weave field jacket, his ghost shell. Lightweight, dark, and capable of maintaining a perfect internal climate regardless of external extremes, it was a masterpiece of Terran miniaturization, capable of making a human viable in almost any environment, a priceless piece of personal tech. To a Kaelon who measured worth in tangible, defensible assets, the shell was a declaration of wealth. The exchange went predictably wrong. A specialized, localized sabotage bomb detonated near the main conduit, housing the cryo-defense system, designed to freeze intruders who breached the perimeter. It didn't freeze intruders. It pressurized the system and ruptured the main coolant pipe, releasing a wave of lethal, sub-zero vapor directly across the exchange floor. Chaos erupted, but Logan's focus zeroed in on the sole casualty nearest the breach, Kalyria, the Kaelian heir. She wasn't wearing protective gear. Her sapphire to turquoise skin, usually a steady, reflective blue, was rapidly modeling to a pale, frosty white, the physiological response of the Kaelian species to extreme cold. She was pinned beneath a piece of shrapnel, barely able to move. Logan didn't hesitate. Protocols, mission mandates, and the immense, irreversible value of his ghost shell vanished from his mind. He saw a life in peril. He burst into a sprint, weaving through the panicking corporate delegates. He hit the floor beside her, the roar of the pressurized vapor drowning out all other sound. With a single powerful rip of the clasps, he shed his jacket, tearing the life-saving material from his shoulders. The sudden, raw chill hit his exposed undersuit, but he ignored it, wrapping the thermal-weaved ghost shell around Kalyria's slight frame, covering her from the neck down. "Hold tight," he commanded, his voice a guttural rasp. The effect was instantaneous. The modeling on her skin stopped where the fabric touched her. She gasped, a sound of profound relief, her large obsidian eyes snapping up to meet his. She looked less like a corporate executive and more like a desperate survivor. Her slender, strong fingers immediately wrapped around the jacket's material, clutching it with a possessive, life-affirming strength. She pulled the collar close, burying her chin in the warm, flexible weave. She had claimed the asset he had given her. He didn't wait. He used a burst of raw human adrenaline to heave the piece of shrapnel away, freeing her leg. He scooped her up, the bulk of his jacket creating a cocoon of heat around her. "We have hostiles," a voice screamed over the general comms. "Karn mercenaries, already capitalizing on the chaos." Logan didn't need the confirmation. He saw the glint of their weapons moving through the smoke. He was exposed now, his undersuit offering minimal protection against the cold or kinetic fire. But the one thing that mattered, Kalyria's life, was secured by his sacrifice. He moved with practiced, low-to-the-ground efficiency of a man trained for infiltration, using the dense corporate furniture as cover. He relied solely on his CQC training, his body a weapon tuned for precision, dodging the bursts of plasma fire. He could feel Kalyria's body pressed against his, her breathing slowly stabilizing beneath the jacket. Her nonverbal fixation was absolute. She didn't look at the enemies or the danger. She watched his profile, tracking every muscle tension, every sharp shift in direction, absorbing the proof of his strength and resilience despite his sudden, profound vulnerability. "Exit Beta 3 meters ahead," Logan grunted, his lungs burning. Just as they reached the emergency airlock, a stocky Kaelian security officer in heavy armor, Vex, Kalyria's personal aide, materialized, blocking the path. His massive plasma rifle was raised, aimed not at the Karn, but at Logan. "Hold, Terran," Vex ordered, his voice synthesized and cold. "You gifted the shell. It is recorded. Stand down." Logan froze. Breathing hard, Kalyria still clutched against his chest. He looked at Vex, then down at Kalyria, who was fiercely gripping the jacket. Her eyes were hard, calculating, yet held a fierce, sensual heat. I saved her life, Logan said, his voice flat. It was a necessary expenditure of personal property. Vex lowered his weapon slightly, his gaze fixed on the thermal weave fabric wrapped around Kalyria. To a Kaelon, the non-reciprocal transfer of the protective shell, the most valuable personal life-sustaining asset, in a moment of corporate peril, is the executive transfer of ownership, a binding proposal to co-manage assets and lineage. The value is logged. The claim is absolute. Kalyria shifted, pushing herself away from Logan just enough to look at the jacket. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she tightened her grip on the material, pulling the zipper to her throat. It was an unmistakable, public refusal to relinquish the asset. She had accepted the gift, and by Kaelon law, she had accepted the terms of the transfer. Her obsidian eyes met Logan's. They were challenging. Cold. But beneath the ice was a powerful, sensual current of possession. You are mine. The unspoken message resonated with terrifying finality. It is complete, Consort, Vex confirmed, his synthesized voice now carrying a note of respect. Kalyria has confirmed the bond. I now stand between you and any corporate liability. Logan, the deep-covered Terran operative, was now the legally binding consort of the Kaelian corporate heir. He had gone from an observer to a principal stakeholder in the most ruthless species in the quadrant, all because of a simple, selfless act of human generosity and superior Terran technology. Vex, secure us passage off station, Kalyria commanded, her voice thin but absolute. My father will not tolerate this claim. Vex moved instantly, his heavy armor thudding on the deck plating. Logan, still processing the impossible, felt his heart rate stabilize. He was claimed. He was bound. And now he had to fight a corporate war for a woman he didn't know, using only his bare hands and the one asset he had just given away. The Karn mercenaries, guided by their strict military protocols, attempted to breach the airlock. Vex, adhering to his new legal mandate, blasted them with suppression fire. Logan used the momentary cover to usher Kalyria into a small, armored transit ship, a vessel not listed on any official corporate manifest, clearly designed for illicit movement. My father, Lord Cygnus, views this as an act of theft, Kalyria explained, strapping herself into the co-pilot seat. Logan's jacket remained fiercely zipped around her. It's a jacket, Kalyria. It costs less than your shoes. It is worth more than all Kaelian thermal technology combined, she retorted with Kaelian logic. It is efficient, compact, and completely self-sustaining. The value of the asset dictates the value of the claimant. You demonstrated superior resource acquisition. He launched the small vessel, forcing it out of the airlock before the Karn could lock a torpedo. The escape was brutal. High G turns punishing their bodies. Kalyria was silent, but her hand, resting on the jacket, never stopped tracing its seams, a deeply intimate, nonverbal study of the possession she now held, and the man who had given it. Just as Logan stabilized the vessel in the jump lanes, the main comm screen flared to life, displaying the stern, angular face of Lord Cygnus, Kalyria's father, the CEO. So the Terran worm thinks he can claim my daughter with a trinket? Cygnus's synthesized voice rasped, cold and full of murderous intent. It was an executive transfer, Lord Cygnus, Kalyria stated, meeting his gaze with unyielding corporate discipline. The claim is valid under Article 7 of the Acquisition Codes. The claim is noted, child, but not yet sealed, Cygnus sneered. I initiate the trial by value. Logan felt a spike of adrenaline mixed with pure dread. He had gone from a corporate espionage mission to an alien duel to the death. Continuing, his voice heavy with menace, you, Terran, may have transferred an asset of high material value, but your intrinsic value, your personal worth as a consort and CEO, remains untested. I will send my best. If you survive, if you retain my daughter and my assets, then the transfer is sealed. If not, the debt is settled in blood, and the jacket, the property, is returned to its rightful owner. The transmission ended, leaving a chilling silence.
The trial by value, Kalyria whispered, her facade finally cracking. He will send the Karn to kill you. The true test is whether the human who made the asset is worthy of the claim. Logan gripped the controls, his jaw tight. He was no longer fighting for Omniterra. He was fighting for his life, and for the life and possession of the woman zipped into his coat. He knew then that the fight wasn't about technology. It was about the unparalleled, adaptive resilience of the human spirit. He steered the vessel toward a remote, derelict refueling platform, the only place large enough to offer tactical cover. Before they reached the platform, Cygnus's elite team ambushed them. 2 heavily armed, specialized assault craft bearing the Kaelon crest. Logan expertly piloted the courier ship through a high-risk debris field, forcing one assault craft to collide. He brought the ship down hard on the platform, the impact rattling his bones. "We fight on the platform," Logan ordered, grabbing a plasma rifle from the ship's armory. "Wait, Logan!" Kalyria stopped him, her hand gripping his forearm. She looked terrified, but her eyes held the calculating focus of an executive making a critical decision. She reached for the zipper of the ghost shell and pulled it down, exposing her pale, delicate skin to the cold of the unpressurized maintenance bay. She then reached inside the lining and removed a small, specialized power cell integrated for the jacket's hyper-efficient thermal regulation. "She need this," she stated, her voice trembling slightly from the cold. "I can overload the platform's pressure regulators with this power cell. It will create an immediate, localized plasma cascade. It's our only chance." The sight of her exposed skin, rapidly turning pale turquoise in the cold, hit her like a physical blow. He understood the profound gravity of her action. She was removing the protective shell to use its core, making herself utterly vulnerable. "Kalyria, no! You'll freeze in minutes," Logan said, his voice laced with panic. "The value of the asset is the power it grants," she countered, with Kaelon logic. "But the value of the consort is his ability to protect the most vulnerable asset when it is exposed. Prove your worth, Logan. Fight for the claim." Logan stared at her, the sudden exposure of her fragility shattering his corporate cool. He realized she was testing him. The ghost shell was his highest material asset, but now his true worth was his body, his mind, and his ability to defend her without his technological advantage. This was the true trial by value. He nodded, a grim determination setting his jaw. 5 minutes. You do your part. I do mine. He sprinted out onto the refueling platform, leaving Kalyria behind the safety of the engine block, now shivering violently but focused. The Karn elite team, led by a fierce, heavily muscled female alien named Kyra, descended from their assault craft. Logan didn't rely on firepower. He relied on pure human adaptability and CQC prowess. He was faster, more flexible, and utterly unpredictable compared to the armored, heavily weaponized Karn. He moved like a ghost, using the metallic structure of the platform, the low-G environment, and sheer human grit. He disarmed the first Karn with a precise, bone-shattering strike to the elbow, then used the Karn's own armor mass against the second, sending him spinning into the void. Every strike, every dodge, every grunt of exertion was a testament to his value. Kalyria, shivering but focused on the task, watched his unarmored, resourceful battle. She felt a profound alien awe. The human male was not simply an owner of high-value tech. He was the superior asset. His mind and body were the priceless resources. Logan faced Kyra, who was a blur of violence and heavy plasma fire. He dodged a near-lethal blast, the energy searing the air where his head had been. He closed the distance, utilizing the low-G environment to launch himself off a strut. He didn't try to break her armor. He targeted the exposed power conduit at the base of her neck, a precise, devastating kick that shorted out her entire suit. She dropped, twitching, defeated not by strength, but by ruthless efficiency. "Now, Kalyria!" Logan roared. Kalyria plunged the ghost shell's power cell into the platform's pressure regulator. A massive plume of plasma burst outward, melting the Karn assault craft and vaporizing the remaining mercenaries. Logan ran back, collapsing beside Kalyria, pulling her into his arms. Her skin was freezing, her body rigid from cold, but her obsidian eyes were bright with triumph and a raw, passionate relief. "You proved your value," she breathed, her lips brushing his ear. "You are worthy of the claim, Logan." He didn't bother with words. He pulled her close, using his own body heat to warm her, his hands frantically rubbing the icy skin of her back. The jacket lay ruined beside them, its power cell expended, but its value had already been confirmed. The transfer was accepted. The bond was sealed in fire and ice. The successful defense of the refueling platform cemented Logan's accidental status as a corporate power player. The news of the Karn massacre, committed by a single, unarmored human, rippled through the sector, establishing Logan's reputation as an unnervingly lethal and highly valuable asset. They continued their flight, using the surviving assault craft, a prize of the trial by value. Kalyria, now dressed in a borrowed Kaelon thermal suit, sat beside Logan, the ruined ghost shell resting in her lap. The intense, close proximity of the escape had fostered an undeniable bond, one of necessity, respect, and rapidly growing, intense desire. "We strike back," she stated, her voice now entirely stable, reflecting the stable temperature of the borrowed suit. "My father is vulnerable. We will use the data from this corporate exchange to expose his key financial nodes. Your Terran understanding of leveraged debt and speculative markets is superior to Kaelon corporate law. I know exactly where the pressure points are. We can dismantle his empire from the inside." That night, on board the small corporate assault craft, their relationship shifted into one of intellectual intimacy. They spent hours hunched over the control panel, Logan translating his aggressive Terran corporate strategies into Kaelon legal jargon, Kalyria providing the critical network access. The atmosphere in the cramped cockpit was thick with unspoken tension. Kalyria would lean close to Logan, her breath hot on his neck, her sapphire skin flushing slightly as she realized the predatory brilliance of his financial mind. Logan, for his part, was intensely aware of her presence, her scent, her subtle silence, the occasional possessive brush of her fingers against his arm as they shared a data slate. At one point, as Logan traced a highly complex arbitrage loop that would collapse one of Lord Cygnus's major subsidiaries, Kalyria reached down and picked up the ruined ghost shell. She placed the jacket onto the seat next to her, then reached out and placed her palm flat against Logan's thigh, directly over the fabric of his undersuit. It was a gesture of profound, sensual concentration. "Your bio-readings are stable, Consort," she murmured, her dark eyes fixed on the data screen. "The pressure in your systems is optimal. This strategy, it is lethal." She was using the jacket's dampening material as a tool of focus, linking her corporate ruthlessness to his physical stability. The suggestive moment was fleeting, focused on business, yet deeply physical. A confirmation that she now saw his body and mind as her most essential asset, his stability fueling her ambition. Logan could only manage a slight nod. His voice lodged in his throat. He felt the intense, possessive heat of her hand through his clothing. The intellectual high of the corporate conquest was inextricably tied to the passionate claims she had made on him. "Execute the command, Consort," she ordered, her voice low. He hit the key. The first piece of Lord Cygnus's empire fell, not with a bang, but with a calculated financial collapse, demonstrating the terrifying synergy of human corporate warfare and Kaelon networks. Their pursuit of the financial data led them to a massive Kaelon data vault, housed deep within a decommissioned asteroid station. This vault held the full, unencrypted history of Lord Cygnus's illegal acquisitions.
The vault is protected by a standard Kaelon laser grid and pressure locks, Kalyria explained, running her finger over the schematic. The lock cylinders are too small for standard Kaelon manipulation. Only the smallest, most flexible life forms can physically breach the security sequence. She looked directly at Logan, the calculation in her eyes replacing the heat of the previous night. "The intrinsic value of the human form, Consort. Your dexterity, your size. It is the only way." Logan accepted the task immediately. His size, a liability in a fistfight with a heavy armored Karn, was now his greatest asset. This was the pinnacle of the HFY moment, human physical form. Its flexibility, endurance, and manual dexterity was the superior tool. He donned a lightweight infiltration suit, Kalyria's eyes tracking his every move. He slipped out onto the asteroid's surface, moving toward the vault entrance. Kalyria was his overwatch, commanding the assault from the ship. Her voice, calm and precise, crackled in his comms. "Grid sequence 2 engaging. Pressure lock rotating. You have 40 seconds to bypass the cylinder, Consort." He moved through the maze of laser grids, his body bending and twisting in ways that would be impossible for the bulky Kaelon guards. He reached the pressure lock cylinder, a complex series of microscopic tumblers. He used a specialized human toolkit, his fingers working with blinding speed and accuracy in the low light. Kalyria's voice was a constant presence, her commands and encouragement a highly sensual affirmation of his value. "The micro-tumblers are registering your heat signature. Yes, Consort, you possess the required delicacy. Your hands, they are perfect for this task. Logan could feel the intense, focused passion of her mind in every word. His success was her success, a physical validation of his worth as her claimed asset. He felt a deep, primal satisfaction in proving the superiority of his species' physical traits. He bypassed the cylinder with seconds to spare, the heavy vault door sliding open with a hiss. Inside, the environment was highly controlled, but as soon as they began downloading the critical data, the vault defenses activated, a sudden, powerful surge of localized heat designed to cook any biological intruder. "Thermal countermeasures active," Kalyria yelled. "The vault has reached 80 degrees Celsius and climbing. Kaelon thermal suits can endure, but you, Logan, you will expire." Logan felt the heat pressing down, suffocating him. He stripped off his infiltration suit. His undersuit was already slick with sweat. He looked at Kalyria, whose Kaelon thermal suit was protecting her, but he knew they couldn't endure much longer. He looked at the only option, the ruined ghost shell, still holding trace-dampening properties, lying beside the data port. Its material, designed for all extremes, could be used to shield them from the heat, but only through total containment. "Kalyria, we are forced to perform the consummation of value," Logan stated, his voice tight with desperation. Her obsidian eyes widened, not with fear, but with sudden, fierce understanding and anticipation. The transfer of shared fate, total energy stabilization. Skin to skin, Logan, now. He grabbed the heavy ruined jacket and spread it on the floor of the vault. Kalyria did not hesitate. She rapidly stripped off her Kaelon thermal suit, her beautiful, temperature-sensitive skin exposed to the lethal heat. The sapphire quickly shifted to a deep, alarming purple. He pulled her down onto the jacket, their bodies pressing together instantly, skin to skin, the multi-weave fabric acting as a localized thermal barrier. Logan wrapped the jacket's sides around them both, pulling the fabric tight to trap the cooler air pockets. The heat was oppressive, but contained. The thermal properties of the ghost shell, even ruined, were incredible, creating a microclimate of survival. Their bodies were pressed together in an intensely sensual, confined space, both sweating profusely, the biological differences magnified by the emergency. He could feel the rapid, frantic beat of her heart, the delicate contours of her alien body against his powerful, human frame. This was the consummation of the executive transfer, a physical affirmation of shared resources, shared vulnerability, and shared fate. Kalyria instinctively pressed her lips to his neck, her breathing ragged. She was not making love, she was merging biosignatures to survive, her submission to his heat, his stability, and his claim absolute. "We survive, Consort," she whispered against his skin, a statement of fierce, raw passion that transcended any corporate contract. The heat, the vulnerability, the confinement, it all fueled the intensity of their physical and emotional bond. The transfer was complete. The data download finished. They had survived, bound by the intense life-saving intimacy of the ghost shell. Emerging from the thermal assault, Logan and Kalyria used the stolen data to unleash a corporate catastrophe upon Lord Cygnus's empire. Logan, his knowledge of Terran finance, amplified by Kalyria's intimate Kaelon network access, executed a series of financial maneuvers that sent Cygnus's stock plummeting. The market instability was unprecedented in Kaelon history. "The assets are now free-floating," Kalyria announced, her voice ringing with satisfaction. "The trial by value is almost complete, Logan. The final move is physical. He will send the last of the Karn." They had returned to the assault craft, the ghost shell now a symbol of their unity. Logan had repaired the tear in the fabric, sewing the edges with precise, careful stitches, a final protective gesture. The last of the Karn mercenaries, personally led by Lord Cygnus's chief at security, ambushed them in transit. The battle was fast, brutal, and fought with the integrated combat skills of Logan and Kalyria. Logan, relying on his training, took the lead, utilizing his human agility and brutal efficiency. Kalyria was his overwatch, using the ship's systems to predict enemy movement and direct fire. Her corporate insight was now focused on kinetic destruction. Every move was in sync. When the chief of security managed to corner Logan, Kalyria, without a word, executed a high-G maneuver that threw the alien off balance, giving Logan the split second he needed to disarm the enemy with a precise, disabling strike. After the fight, the ship was silent, littered with the bodies of their enemies. Kalyria walked over to Logan, who was breathing hard, a small cut bleeding on his temple. She didn't use a medikit.
She reached out, her fingers touching his hands, the hands that had saved her, bypassed the lock, and claimed her fortune. "You are perfect, consort," she murmured, her voice filled with deep, quiet devotion. She bent and pressed her lips to the knuckles of his dominant hand, a powerful non-verbal cue of her complete submission to his dominance and value. His worth, once purely transactional, was now intensely emotional. Lord Cygnus was finally deposed, his empire seized by galactic financial regulators due to the evidence Logan and Kalyria had provided. The executive transfer was complete. Logan was no longer a human spy, but the legitimate co-CEO of a vast, newly merged corporate power, having succeeded in the trial by value. At their official public address to the corporate sector, the staging was immaculate. Kalyria stood tall, regal in a high-collared Kaelon dress, her sapphire skin glowing with confidence. Logan stood beside her, clad in a perfectly tailored suit. But the suit was special. Its breast pocket was embroidered with a subtle dark gray pattern that mirrored the thermal weave of his original ghost shell. It was a silent acknowledgement of the claim, the foundation of their power. In a carefully choreographed moment, Kalyria stepped forward to address the delegates. She then paused, turning back to Logan. Logan presented her with a gift, a high-collared, form-fitting garment crafted from the most advanced Terran thermal fabric, a material superior even to the original ghost shell. It was a reciprocal gift of technology, a final, public confirmation of their shared resources and equality. Kalyria accepted the gift, her eyes shining with genuine affection. She held the garment against her cheek, then draped it over the podium. "The claim of the consort, Logan," she announced to the galaxy, her voice steady and powerful, began with a simple act of protection. The value of that act was his life, his mind, and his technological superiority. Today we stand as co-owners, bound by law, but more profoundly by shared peril and mutual respect. That night, in their private corporate penthouse on the neutral capital world, the corporate masks were gone. Logan was lying in bed when Kalyria entered wearing only the newly gifted Terran thermal garment. She stood in the soft light, the dark, flexible fabric clinging to every curve, a second skin that spoke of ownership and passion. She walked to his side and slowly stripped the garment off, her dark eyes never leaving his. It was no longer a transactional display, it was an act of profound, passionate intimacy. "I love you, Logan," she whispered, her voice husky, "not for the asset you gave, but for the life you saved and the value you proved." Logan reached for her, pulling her close, burying his face in the soft, cool expanse of her skin. The emotional bond now far surpassed the initial contractual claim. He smoothed the fabric of the thermal suit, lying beside them. He reached out and touched the simple, repaired tear on the old ghost shell, resting on a nearby table, the jacket that had started the war and sealed the contract. He smiled, acknowledging the absurdity and the profound beauty of the life he had accidentally claimed. He was the consort